Avoiding the Storm by Psyopticnerve. It hasn't snowed yet this winter. Bare trees and dead patches of grass that are usually made more palatable by blankets and drifts of white loam outside the windows like corpses that were never buried. It makes it difficult to keep from wandering into the darker corners of the mind and ruminating on the inevitability of that final moment that awaits us. Thick, wet coughs come from down the hall, the kind that sound as though they have clawed their way out of the lungs, struggling against one another to be the first to escape. A few seconds of breathless gasping go by before they return. I wait outside the door once the fit subsides, wondering if I should enter. After a minute of silence, I retreat. This is what they told me it would be like at the end. The endless parade of grave-faced doctors and specialists who I'd encountered during the months prior. They had only been words then, almost meaningless, just as meaningless as the reassurances they gave me about how strong and supportive I was being, as meaningless as telling her she was brave in the face of certain death. She'd wanted to be home when it happened. She had insisted. She'd refused hospice or at-home care. She wanted to be with me, and only me, in our home for the little time she had. I'd done my best to make her as comfortable as possible, dutifully attending to her minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. That's all she had left, they told me. It was only a matter of days. Those days turned to weeks, and now over a month, into the dead of winter, and still not a single flake has fallen from the sky. Yet the clouds above are dark, billowing, brooding. The air around me swirls, and I sigh. It is finally here. She is awake when I return inside. Her frail body seems to have sunken into the bed. Her eyes pierce mine from behind hollow sockets, the only remnants of the vibrant woman she had been only a short while ago. "You'll never guess, dear," I say. "It's snowing outside." "I want to see." She gives a faint smile, her voice like rustling leaves. "Of course." I grip her gently, turning her over to face the window. "Beautiful, isn't it? So beautiful. So beautiful." The flakes drift to the ground, slowly accumulating. Slowly. We watch them for a while. When I finally bring myself to look back, she is blanketed by the white of the linen and the pillow held over her face. The house is much too still without her. Final. Absolute. I find myself back in the blizzard, holding my shaking hands open to the sky above to catch the furious flakes. In the warmth of my palm, they begin to melt, before dripping a dark crimson onto the unblemished white at my feet. Little Girl Shadow by Evan the Nerd, 83. In the winter moonlight, the shadow of a little girl falls on the front porch of a house at the far end of a street. The shadow knocks on the door. Jenny, the occupant of the house, is shaken from her sleep and stumbles out of bed. She opens the door, and she jolts back at the sight of a shadow standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry, but can I use your phone?" Mommy left me at the mall, and I need to call her. It whispers, and Jenny hesitates. She doesn't want to let it in. She wants to slam the door in its dripping face. But she can't fight the urge to help. It's cold out, and the shadow is crying, white tears down black cheeks. Jenny reluctantly steps aside, and the shadow shifts inside in a flash. She closes the door, but the shadow isn't there when she turns around to face the living room. She's not completely alone, though, because the crackling fireplace starts to dim, and the room grows colder and colder. Jenny feels something on the back of her neck, fingers tickling down to her spine. Goosebumps rise. Darkness envelops the house, and Jenny can't see anything after a while. Everything fades to a static, chill black. The spirit of winter soon consumes her, and she's never seen again. Blood in the Snow. Unknown author. Damn it! I was leaving a trail of blood in the snow, like a path of breadcrumbs for the others. I tried to apply more pressure on the wound in my abdomen to stop the bleeding, but it was no use. I was like a stuck pig, thrashing against a hunter's spear, delaying the inevitable feast. It wasn't fair what I was doing. We had all agreed to the game and understood it was the only way we could all survive until we were rescued. Someone had to make the ultimate sacrifice so that the rest could live. I had drawn the short straw. I was to be eaten, and now I was being selfish. But I just couldn't help it. Even though I had agreed to the terms, once I saw that short straw, my lizard brain took over immediately. I had to escape. I had to get away from the hungry faces of my friends. I had to survive. I could hear them whooping and hollering like a pack of hyenas as they trailed behind me. My lungs burned as I sucked in the winter air. I felt dizzy from the blood loss. I could still feel Michael's knife in my gut, how it had slowly slipped into me after we had wrestled over it. I spotted a nook in a deciduous tree and clambered into it after throwing some fresh powder over the blood trail, making my body as small as possible. After a moment, I heard the group come crashing through the forest, maybe 50 yards away from me. I held my breath and said a prayer that they wouldn't find me. They were speaking in hushed tones at first, but then grew louder in frustration. I was their meal, and they couldn't find me, but I was so close and they knew it. I bet they could almost taste it, mouths salivating at the thought of sinking their teeth into my liver. Suddenly there was a scream, and then a great commotion. Twigs and limbs snapped as what sounded like a locomotive barreling through the trees. More screams, then a mighty roar that sent chills down my spine. What in God's name? Crying, weeping screams, then gnashing of teeth and the sounds of bones breaking. I couldn't see anything, and I dared not look. And then there was silence. And subtle, wet chewing. The sun was beginning to set before I finally heard whatever it was walk off into the distance. I peeked out from my hiding place. Nothing. I made my way over to where I'd heard the group. They were in pieces. Enormous bear tracks formed a circle around the slaughter. A single tear escaped my eyes before I bent down and began shoveling bits of my friends into my mouth, swallowing as much meat as I could to sat the hunger. I took the short straw from my coat pocket and sat it in the middle of the devastation. I had to survive. Something Has My Voice, written by the Prowler. There's something in this house that has my voice. I find myself hiding in the living room closet with my son and wife, not believing what I'm seeing. It started just 2 hours earlier when I was in the kitchen making the children a snack. Yes, you heard right. I said children. I had 2 at the time. I finished in the kitchen and stood at the bottom of the stairs and called the children to come down. I then went back in to get their plates and set them on the kitchen table. When I turned around, though, I was greeted by my son running in, frightened, saying someone was in their closet and it sounded like me. My son said he knew it wasn't me because he saw me at the bottom of the stairs, telling them to come get their food. But my daughter, my poor daughter, didn't know that, and my son said he saw her go in, even though he told her not to. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was joking. But before I could say anything, I heard her scream. My heart dropped. I grabbed my son's hand, and as we headed out into the living room to go get my daughter, I heard a wet thud hit the floor. It was my daughter. My poor baby girl's mutilated corpse was staring back at us with her lifeless eyes. I stood there in complete shock. My son started screaming. Then I heard it. My voice, coming from my children's room upstairs, and it was calling my son's name, followed by an unnerving growl. I felt my son's hand tremble in mine. I looked down at him and told him everything was going to be okay. We heard the closet door from my children's room slam open, upstairs, and then shuffling towards the door. My son began to cry, so I picked him up and we hid in the living room closet. We stood there listening to whatever was upstairs with my voice move and thrash about. What was it? A beast? Some killer maniac? I don't believe in monsters or spirits or whatever supernatural bullshit is out there. It has to just be some madman up there of flesh and bone. And when the time's right, I'm going to jump out and kill the motherfucker. Me and my son continued to stand there, waiting. After about 15 minutes or so of hiding in the closet, I heard the garage door open and my heart stopped. My wife was home. I had to save her before that bastard got a hold of her. She walked through the front door and shouted, "Honey, I'm home. Where's everyone at?" I then heard that thing with my voice answer her. "I'm upstairs, honey. I have a surprise for you. Come get it." She started towards the stairs, asking aloud, "What's with the red all over the carpets?" But before she could take a step, I jumped out and pulled her into the closet. She was in complete shock and said, "How was I down here when she just heard me upstairs?" I told her that wasn't me. I explained everything that happened and had to watch her reaction when I told her that our daughter was dead. She then held and consoled our son as we waited. After that, a sad string of unfortunate events transpired. The doorbell rang not long after. It was a delivery, and it needed a signature. I had then remembered I was expecting a very expensive piece of sports memorabilia today. As the delivery man knocked a second time, the thing upstairs made its way down. My God, I thought, I have to get this guy out of here before it's too late. But there was nothing I could do. It was downstairs, and we finally saw what it looked like. It was human-shaped and was built like me, but wasn't complete. I can't explain it. The thing was almost transparent, maybe a shade darker. Was it a ghost or a poltergeist? I don't think so, but whatever this was, it was mimicking me. It opened the door and dragged the poor bastard inside and ripped his throat out, right in the living room. Sadly, I wish I could say that was the last death, but it was not. Person after person who knocked on our door became a hot meal of some sort, from the electrician to the furniture delivery man and the dishwasher repairman. They all died horrifically. I looked over at my wife, side-eyed, and she smart-acidly replied, "It's not my fault. I wanted to get everything out of the way today, and how was I supposed to know that there would be a killer wannabe you traipsing around here, killing people left and right?" Just then a knock. I looked at my wife again and said, "Who is it now?" She shrugged her shoulders at first, but then her eyes widened. Before she could answer, the voice on the other side of the door spoke. "It's me. Grandma's here, and I brought presents." Holy shit! It's my mother-in-law. I shrugged my shoulders and looked at my wife and said, "Oh well, honey, she's about to get her ass eaten. There's nothing we could do. Our home is turning into a human buffet, and we're trapped. Please, don't knock on the door at 1333 Moss Grove Lane, or you might be next on the menu." Thaw by psyopticnerve. Those who bear the bitter bite of a dark northern winter may know of the voices the season brings. On the many dismal, frigid nights where the wind threatens to take the door from its hinges and you can never get the fire blazing hot enough, they grow louder. Disembodied whispers that seep in through any skin left exposed and linger in your ears just long enough that they cannot be dismissed as imagination.
We are hungry, we are starved, we are but skin and bone. We must eat, we must eat, we must.
I despair that it is true, and I beg of you to leave me be, I mutter, idly watching the flames dance upon the logs. Frothing crimson juice, there is life yet, in sticky red death. An image comes to me as I gaze into the fire. A pack of wolves before the carcass of an elk, intestines spilling forth, steaming in the frozen air, feasting, tearing, snarling, hidden behind their cold yellow eyes. Have they remorse? The logs have nearly been reduced to ash as I ponder this. The chill that replaces the roaring flames finally wakes me from my trance. I have been dreading the short journey I must now take for some time, out into the vicious wind and blinding snow to the woodshed. The path my footsteps made on my last outing have long since been buried in a sea of white, and I struggle to pull the sled behind me. All the while, the voices follow.
Lay upon the ground, sleep, a thawing corpse come spring, to be devoured by beasts, and never know the pain it brings.
I tell you, leave me be! I bellow, retreating inside the meager shelter of the woodshed, shivering, quaking, my hands and feet numb, and desperate to be warmed by the hearth. I roll the first log to the chopping block, only to find that the hatchet is not wedged within. It is nowhere to be found. It cannot be inside the cabin. It simply cannot be there. I made sure never to bring it there. I would never. Back out into the blizzard, stumbling blindly. The voices linger, coming to me in fragments.
Lay upon the ground, let memory sleep. It will be better this way.
The room is dark. I can just make them out as I attempt to strike the match, their sleeping forms too silent and still to be caused by an ordinary slumber. The feeble flame illuminates the hatchet resting beside the bed, stained and accusatory. Their skeletal faces leer up at me. All of their flesh, all of their sustenance has been stripped from the bone. Please, please, children, have mercy on me. Their voices are fading as the snow covers me, drifting farther away.
We know that you were hungry, Mother. We know that you must eat. You must eat. You must.
Until all I have left is remorse. A Winter's Sacrifice by Evan the Nerd, 83. Please, said his father, and give her back. The boy could barely hear him over the screaming wind, the shrieking storm. Snow had begun to pile up. Heaps of ice jutted from an ocean that stretched into the horizon. Now, his father couldn't take a single step without stumbling. Please! Something pelted his naked body. Hail. But he didn't feel it. He couldn't feel anything. Nerves frozen and useless, and overwhelmed by the deep chill. Everything was so cold. So cold. Please! It had been an hour. Mom hadn't come back. She had left them. Walked out the front door, despite his father's warnings, his begging and crying. She had to go out. She would take Amy's place. Amy would rejoin them in the cabin. But no. Give her back! They had waited. Amy had knocked. Give her back! His father had cried and cried. Give me my wife! But not for Amy. Never for Amy. Take him! And not even for him. As his father raised him higher, the storm would only scream. I run a hotel. In the winter, terror comes to stay. Unknown author. Close season. It's the pits. I run a small hotel. I used to run it with my wife, but she left me because of her drinking. She did not go far. I see her in the local bar, sometimes sitting alone, hunched over a bottle, sometimes with her arm around a stranger. It hurts seeing her like that, but there is nothing I can do. Believe me, I tried. Now all I can do is try and keep busy and not think. Busy is easy during the summer. This is a tourist town. We are surrounded by verdant forest, overlooked by awe-inspiring mountains. The stresses of the hustle and bustle of the city are eased away by the beauty and serenity that greet you in every direction you look. There are thousands of visitors here over the summer, and I am always fully booked and run off my feet. Come autumn, though, and the flow of tourists slows to a trickle. The first bite of cold winds swirling through the streets encourages any left to pack up and leave. Soon after, the snows come, and the road into town becomes impassable until next spring. Nature rules here, as she once did across whole continents. We cannot argue. Just make sure we are stocked up on essential supplies, our food and water and beer, and gasoline for the generators. I have a generator around the side of the hotel. It's relatively new, reliable. I finished thoroughly cleaning and checking it before I lock up the hotel for the winter. The summer, a memory. I try and make the most of the transformed town. On an early December day, I stand in the street outside my hotel, just as it is going dark, and listen to the near silence. There are 20 of us who see out the winter, and everyone else is indoors. There is no traffic on the road. The only sound I can hear is my generator purring efficiently, and the birds settling down to nest for the night. I try and savor the tranquility while it lasts. I breathe deep and take in the crisp, clean air. It's in the air that there is the first inkling. There's a smell. Slight at first, so slight you might think you were imagining it, but then it hits you. The smell of meat gone bad. Then there is a murmuring. Voices approaching. My fellow residents will be aware of this as well. The lights in their homes click off, one by one, leaving each in darkness behind drawn curtains. Only the streetlights remain. The birds have fallen silent. My heart is beating faster by now. It is cold outside, but colder deep within me. I will never get used to the fear that comes with this moment, or the terror that will linger for the months to come. The first of them appear. There are holes in their clothes, through which you can see the holes in their skin, the bones below. There is an urgency to their shuffling gait, and soon they are congregating around the streetlights, their faces turned up to them, their hands reaching out. I step silently as I can back into the hotel and extinguish the lights inside. I walk along now dark corridors and swing open the doors to the largest room in the hotel, go inside, and flick a switch. I did not close the front door of the hotel behind me, and within minutes I can smell them, hear their murmuring. I make my way to the far end of the room, wait by the smaller door there, holding it open, ready to flee. They file in, begin to fill the room until there are 100 or more, all crammed in. They stand gazing upwards, hands raised, in a kind of reverie. Some sway, some jerk and twitch. The object of their attention, the thing that has them drawn here, the disco ball in the center of the ballroom ceiling. It spins, casting out glittering light, bathing the room in speckles of red, green, blue, and silver. They are transfixed. I make my exit, hurry up to the second floor, which I have once again converted for the winter months into a compound. I have supplies, chemical toilets, doors reinforced with steel and bolted firm. They come every winter, and they stay. As long as the generator keeps going and the disco ball keeps spinning. Why do we put up with it? Why do we stay? Speaking for myself, for my wife, for the hope that she will come back to me, and because in early March a day will come when I can see the snow melting. I will crack open my window and feel the fresh air on my face. I will hear the birds singing again. It's then I know it's safe to leave my second floor compound. I walk down through the hotel. There's usually a little damage. Scrape marks on the walls. These can be painted over. Cracked window panes, easy to replace. I head into the ballroom, look through the open doors. The disco ball is still. The generator has run out of fuel, and the room is empty. They have left us until next winter. I go get my long broom and begin to sweep the ballroom floor. I sweep it all up and put it in a hold-all. When in the next few weeks I drive down to the neighboring town, and after I have loaded up on fresh supplies for preparing for the first guests of the year, I will pay a visit to the pawn shop and empty out my hold-all and cash in my findings. The dented coins, the rings, pendants, bracelets, gold teeth, the things they left behind as an offering in return for a winter of sparkling light. Winter Morning by Monechetti. The man woke up one winter morning to a curious set of circumstances. A knife was buried in the headboard of his bed, about 6 inches from where his face had been sleeping prior. He carefully extracted himself from the covers and put his bare foot in a small puddle. His bed was surrounded in small puddles, the size of a young child's shoe. He followed the small puddles to his front door, which was wide open. His dog, a cocker spaniel, was tied to the porch swing. It whined dejectedly as he untied it. "What happened here, Parker?" he said to the dog, as he surveyed his yard and porch. Snowballs checkered the whole front of his house. His wind chimes were broken, and the lawn was filled with menacing snowmen, each sporting grotesque features. They were all facing his bedroom. Unlikely that was a coincidence. he thought. The watery footprints gave way to small tracks in the fresh fallen snow. They surrounded his house in circles over and over, with a particular collection of footprints at the base of his bedroom window. He slipped on his snow boots and coat over his pajamas, followed them through the field. There were at least 5 distinct sets of footprints, and they led him over a mile to the edge of his property. There, near the main road, was a house he rented to an elderly couple. They'd been good tenants for years, but he had recently told them he was increasing their rent by nearly double. Their reaction was extreme fear. It would be most of their monthly Social Security, they had said. But he was adamant. His brother had told him property values were going up all over, and he was intent on getting his money. Because of his last interaction with the couple, it made the fact that the tracks led to their house a bit awkward. He was angry because somebody had obviously gone through great lengths to prank him, but at the same time, his last conversation with a man and his wife was tense. He knocked at the door, and the old man answered. "Hello," said the old man. "Did you come to collect the new rent? I'm afraid we won't have it for another week." The landowner explained, rather sheepishly, that it appeared some children had vandalized his home and that the tracks had led to their house. The old man smiled and stated that there hadn't been children in their home for about 50 years. The landlord was thoroughly shaken at this point, and he rescinded his increase of the rent. Perhaps he had been too hasty, he said. He began the trek home through the snow. Gently closing the door, the old man told his wife that they didn't have to worry about finding money for the rent. She was overjoyed at the news, of course, but called her husband into the next room to show him something. "I found all of my porcelain dolls in disarray again this morning," she said. "And what's even stranger is that their boots were all soaked with water." I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.